Story number one. Is social media hurting our future? Social media is all around us. We got Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. We've got all these different channels into our social landscape. And as we talked about before in many of our podcasts, we're coming at this now from a interest base as opposed to a relational base. And what that basically means is these companies are pushing us to be involved in certain interests as opposed to connecting with people, which is the relationship side. And that's what makes this dangerous because we're getting into a situation where we're more and more involved in the social media thing and less involved with other people. And a study came out by this one group that's interesting, digital natives. It is titled From Digital Natives to Digital Captives. And it actually shined a pretty interesting light on what's going on with Gen Z in particular, but it can be applied to many of us who are invested in this thing. And it's gotten even to the point where the government's getting involved. And 41 states are suing Meta, claiming that Facebook's addictive and it's harming our kids. Theo, this is a nuanced piece where we're just talking about technology in general taking us over, pulling us into the matrix. What are your thoughts on this? I know you have kids and you've seen this thing translate, so just give me some thoughts on it.
Yeah. It's a part of the bigger trend that we've been talking about with social media. Is it basically hijacking attention and people becoming addictive to these type of things, right? TikTok, we see the numbers rising on that for Gen Zers, and those are the folks that are born, I think it's like what, 2000 and above, the ones who are preteen, just after college level, they're the ones who are going to be driving our future, and then they're addicted to the internet. This is crazy, Mr. Benjamin. They're driving their identity. This article, well, maybe we'll link to it in Instagram and all that stuff, but it just really highlights how, at first, it's one thing to be like something that you have to highlight, well, having connections on social media and those connections being more real than your actual connections outside of the digital world. But it's also part of identity because if you're not up to the latest nugget of what's happening in social media, then you miss out on real life conversations, right? Because people are talking about, hey, did you see that TikTok or did you know this dance? Or you do that in person, so you feel outside the loop, an outsider, if you will. You don't even have that knowledge of it. And then these kids are starting so young. To your point, my daughter has a phone. We don't put her; she's not on TikTok, but I guarantee she's finding ways to look at stuff, and not just
Mhm.
that, but just on YouTube, because YouTube, a lot of YouTube shorts are probably repurposed TikToks. So, yeah, she's seeing some of that content, and so I think that's changing our behavior as well, and how she's perceiving herself as a young woman growing up and changing her identity. So it's definitely scary, man. I always try to put things in perspective, right? Mr. Benjamin, we were growing up, people were that rap music that's gonna warp the young minds of folks, young folks, and they're talking about this and that and cussing all the time. How's that gonna we're just gonna raise a bunch of hooligans, right? Because of what they listen to rap lyrics, right? That didn't happen for the most part. Most of us know the lyrics and stuff, but we're not living that life. So are we just maybe overreacting because this is a new way of people communicating? We don't fully understand it yet. So that is a part of where I'm thinking
Mm.
too, right? And that's what the suing of Facebook is about. Is it causing more harm? Now they do have numbers in here, right? I think there was some numbers in here that show what was it, 100 was it 145% the percentage increase in US teen girls with major depression since 2010 2010. It's 2023. So that means that was up 145% from just what 13 years ago. And then they said of Gen Z, 73% of the reports sometimes are always feeling alone. So maybe there's some validity there because they have the numbers to showcase people feel alone, they feel isolated, they feel like they're going through silent depression that we don't even know about. And yeah, so I think there's some issues there, but I also think with any new technology, new communication form, there's going to be some learning curves, and we may have to think through it over time. What do you think?
I I think we're dealing with in this era something fundamentally different than other technologies. And maybe every era thought about that it was fundamentally different, but when you're getting to a level where corporations are taking more and more of the power from you in order to do whatever they think is necessary. They're just, oh yeah, here's an auto suggestion. Oh, here's an auto correct. Oh, here's what you like. And it mentioned somewhere in the article that I can't find it exactly, but where the kids were like, yeah, I know my influences are based on all this stuff that I'm consuming, but it's okay. And I was like, okay, but think back to our last podcast where we talked about free will.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we lose this free will in a very obvious way? So we start listening to the corporations. Let's start listening to the algorithm, and it just burns itself into the social construct. I do think we're dealing with something fundamentally different here.
Okay. Like I said, as a parent, definitely something I'm concerned about. And because what people put their attention to, what they focus in, that's what's going to grow. And so you compare yourself on it, social media constantly, consistently, then you're going to try to emulate that. If you can't achieve the success they have, then that's what they say, comparison is the thief of joy. And so
Mm.
over time, that's going to cause them to feel more and more depressed. And so I do feel as a parent, I am concerned about that more. And so want to figure out how to restrict that or how to build up the self-esteem that so they don't fall succumb to that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we're going to keep an eye on and see what happens over the next couple of years. So yeah, Mr.
Oh,
Benja,
I,
it's scary.
yeah, to your point, we were talking about attention. They do have numbers here. Let me quote from this Digital Natives to Digital Captives report that got published. Gen Zers are spending nearly half their waking hours scrolling and swiping. In
Mm.
2022, the average daily screen time was 6 hours and 41 minutes on cell phones alone. Yeah, and I'll stop right there. That's enough to the 6 hours and 41 minutes. I've been there, you know what I mean? I've been there, but once I recognized it, I was like, "Oh," and pulled myself out. Kids these days, or not even kids, but we're talking about young people, 20s, early 30s. A lot of them just don't understand, they don't want to understand, they don't have a connection outside of this device, this ether called the internet, this new metaverse that we're creating. And I don't mean that in terms of going into like Zuckerberg metaverse or anything. Like there's other universe on top of our own that's developing something. I don't even want to call it communities because we're not connecting with people, we're connecting with these concepts and ideas. And it's really weird.
Yeah. More to come, man. I think it's one of those things that we want to continue to monitor social media and what it's doing to the society in general, something we've been talking about in this pod for quite a while. So I'm sure we could continue talking about it. But yeah, keep watching.
Yeah. Real quick, I know you want to go on. Do you use social media before bed or when
Oh,
you wake up?
no, Mr. Pigeon. I'm on social media, but I don't consume it.
Okay.
And you know how I do it, right? I have a team, and so I just let them do everything. They know more about my content than I do, and because now every now and then I'll go watch the folks that I like to watch every now and then. It's a podcast. Go watch Mr. Benja. But other than that, no, I really try to stay away from just going down those deep dives. I'm very rarely on TikTok. YouTube is my go-to mostly. Instagram, I'm not on that at all. Yeah. And it's funny. So now that I've been doing social media pretty regularly for the last year. It's so funny, man. I literally have saw people. Oh, you're the man on TikTok. Like people I know now starting to bubble up. And it's
Uh,
interesting. And I always forget. I was, oh yeah, I am. I had two people listen, and then of course my wife's. And it goes to show you that, man, these platforms, there's a lot of people on them. You just forget. And
mhm.
it's the people always watching. So you just don't even think about it. And that's how I, but yeah, if that's part of your life as a young person, I get it. That's your identity. That's how you connect with people. That's how you probably get dates. How you do all kinds of stuff. But it's yeah, I'm not. Are you a consumer? A lot. Are you are on it a lot? You said you've been there, but where are you at now? It's your consumption. Now I'm talking about your production.
Mhm.
Talk about your consumption of social media.
I'm at a much healthier place with consumption, but I was listening to your boy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I just finished reading The Gap in the Gain, and they started talking about sleep patterns. And this whole thing mentioned sleep patterns. Study mentioned sleep patterns. So I was like, you know what? I need to make sure I adjust that a little bit because sometimes I'm like in the back of my head, "Now let me get off this one message. That person needs to know what I'm about." Drop that message real quick, but then I'm on there right before I sleep. So not good. All right, that's all I got for this one. You good?
Yeah, keep it moving, brother.